Hi everyone, it's me. You know what? Let me stop that. Hi everyone, it's meteorologist Joe Chaffee on this Thursday, and let's get right to it. As I know somebody requested they wanted to see a snow cover map, and if you want to see this on a regular basis, go to intellicast.com and you'll find it there, or just Google snow cover map, and I think it's the second or third one that comes down. But this is actually a pretty good map produced by WSI Corporation, and you can see that. Snow cover is actually pretty extensive across North America. I was looking at the the snow cover indices that measure this, and at least for North American for the northern hemisphere, after a brief pause, have rallied up to close to the highs of the last 15 or so years. So there's a lot of snow cover out there. It has not played out in terms of snow events across the southern half of the United States, at least, but right now, and I was looking at stats around at least around the New York, New Jersey area, and so on. We're having a slightly colder than normal December, and snowfall is running at least average up until the date. And in inland areas, it's above average. And I have a lot of snow and winter weather lovers that are complaining, and I keep telling them, you're complaining about nothing. You're having a typical December. So stop the nonsense, okay? All right, so let's move on, because I want to show you what's going to be happening over the next couple of days. And it appears that we have a more bullish winter weather pattern developing later next week, but we'll see. For the Northeast, and for the Midwest, it is bullish at the moment in the western states, and you can see the snow cover. I'm taking you and showing you here additional snow that's going to fall between now and into Christmas Day, and I'll take you right into Christmas night, and this is at 1 a.m. Monday morning, the 26th. So this is the total snowfall. I would suggest that, in the darker blues that you see here, this is basically either snow that just falls out of the sky, or at most you get a coating out of it. So you want to focus more on the lighter blue shades, and then of course in the purples. And you can see it's really extensive out in the west. It's extensive in the Dakotas, into northwestern Minnesota, with a well-telegraphed blizzard that's heading up that way. And in the east, we have this minor event that's moving through today, and we are going to have a relatively minor event moving through later Friday night into Christmas Eve that'll probably produce some of the heavier accumulating snows in upstate New York and in New England. This is pretty good skiing going on this season across the interior Northeast, which is a far cry from where it was last year. And of course, in the West, it's very good with all these additional snows. So let's look at the weather pattern going forward, because we have a lot of changes happening across with the weather models, and a lot of debate over how this is going to play. But let me just show you with the European. First off, we do have a weak system that's coming through on Saturday. It's hard to really find here, but it is there. And there's a cold front that's going to be coming through as well. So that front goes by. We're going to get some precipitation here later Friday night into early Saturday afternoon, but weather conditions will improve as far as Christmas Eve and Hanukkah services go. So if you have that in your plans, you're not going to have weather in the east anyway to get in your way. Now, there's action going on in the West. I'm showing you the European model here, and then I'm going to go to the. Unfortunately, I can't show you the maps with the precipitation and the snow cover and everything else, because that's all licensed stuff, and you have to pay for it, et cetera, et cetera. But it does have a wrapped up low in central North Dakota by Sunday night, which it runs northeastward up toward James Bay. And that brings a cold front through here on Wednesday. The flavor for next week has changed somewhat on weather models. That high goes out. We have a stronger, and you see these darker blues here, so that's a sign of cold air that's plunging down. And the European does show this with some kind of a wave that goes by with a cold front that goes by here on Thursday, and we turn much colder for the Thursday, Friday time frame next week. And then there's another shot of very cold air that comes in to the northern plains, and this is going to be heading toward the east coast with another cold front as we head into the very first part of January. So the European has a very bullish view here of the weather pattern turning colder in the eastern part of the United States. Now, let's go to the GFS model because I want to show you at least how these storms are going to play out, and you can see it here a lot better with regards to precipitation, so it makes more sense. Okay, so here we are for today. This is the system for Friday night and Saturday that's getting kicked out of the southwest. It's relatively weak. We get a shot of rain and done. But meanwhile, you can see what's happening here in the western states as low pressure comes into Oregon and settles into northern California and Nevada and brings some snow to the northwest. At the same time, that weak system going east brings a little bit of snow to the Great Lakes. This system descends down into the central Rockies through Utah, over Colorado. So you guys are going to get some decent snows there, of course. And then that low runs northeastward into Nebraska, eastern South Dakota, really deepens into a major storm. You see the darker blues here. You're going to produce blizzard conditions across much of the Dakotas here and into northwestern Minnesota. The low tracks well to the west of the Lake Superior. So this is a rain event for the Great Lakes. And you'll notice when it gets to the East Coast with this cold front on Tuesday, there's very little with it. So it may just come through dry. Here comes some slightly colder air behind that, but the main push is for later in the week, and you can see it here. It starts to develop a wave on what looks like an Arctic front of some kind for Thursday, and then that goes out, and we'll have to see how this evolves. Okay, I would suggest, and have suggested already a number of times, if you see a storm printed on the long range beyond day 6 or 7, it's likely to completely change its profile over time. So to get really worked up over things is kind of silly. The other thing is sort of in the other direction. If you see just hints of something in the time frame after day 7 or 8, I think you stand a better chance of seeing that evolve into something important than not. So I think this is one we're going to have to see how it evolves. Maybe there's a chance, there's a possibility that this could look a little different over time, and I'll explain that in a second. Then you have this cold air shot. It's a fairly extensive cold air shot that comes into the east. Then it pulls out. Now the GFS still wants to keep it, colder air coming, but it just takes a lot longer for the next shot of cold air to come down. But it does have a colder look when we look at the upper air. I want to first go back to the European model, however, and show you what's going on in the upper air pattern. Okay, and let me widen out to the North America view, because this is really where you can see it here a lot better. So let's show you first off where we are at the current time, which is here. Okay, and really Canada is, cold air is basically cut off. You've got the flow across Canada from west to east. You got the flow across the United States from west to east. You got all these weather systems running around. Nothing particularly bullish with regards to cold and snow, but in the west it is, and there's that deep trough that comes into the western states to make the blizzard. And here's what happens, by the way. Now we're into Sunday night. You can see what happens where this big ridge builds in the east, and you have this strong system that comes into the west getting all wrapped up. So that lifts up well to the west of the Mississippi River and doesn't really have that much of an influence on the eastern part of the United States. You still have kind of a westerly flow across Canada. And the other thing is, in terms of it being mild in the east, it is aloft at the surface this time of year. You get the high that goes by to your north, and it kind of bleeds some colder air down at the low levels. So it might not be as mild as you think. But as we go through next week on the European, you can see what happens. The jet stream not only tends to lower, but the whole profile in Canada begins to change. And now we're in day 8, and this is that first shot of cold air that comes down. So you've got this vortex here. The flow from Canada is starting to become more, let's call it, cross-polar. One of the important thing that's happening on the European is the fact that you have a big ridge that's developing out in the Pacific and building towards Alaska. You also have a ridge that's building out in the Atlantic from Greenland eastward. So we're going to have to see what kind of implications that has in the longer term. And then when also, and notice, by the way, there's a second vortex that's forming up in northern Canada that the European drops down by day 10. So you have cold air. The first vortex pulls out, but there's a second one that's developing and is forced southward. So now you have, as you look at this, you have this pretty well-established cold flow. You've got a vortex locked up in here. The upper high builds up across Alaska, and you have a ridge that builds up across Greenland. So you basically got, cold air that's trapped, and you do have this sort of cross-polar flow that develops over time on the European. The Canadian kind of shows the same idea. So I'll show you that real quick for the same time frame. And here's the Canadian model. It sort of has the same idea. The first one, MS, is the first cold shot is here pulling out. It has a more concentrated vortex in Hudson's Bay, but it still has this very, relatively cold flow into the United States, has some ridging up into Alaska, has some ridging up across the top over Greenland. So this is a cold weather pattern, and it would imply, based on the ridging that's going on and where it's going on, that it might lock in for a little while. Now, the GFS is kind of there. It's just a little bit different in that it takes longer for the second vortex on the GFS to form and drop down. And then it wants to start doing some different things in the longer term in terms of, action in the southwest. And actually, this is probably a stormier view down the road if this were to evolve this way. I can't see the European and Canadian beyond this day 7. Beyond day 10. Your GFS goes out to day 16. Of course, we know this is going to kind of change, but I'm more interested in seeing the broader profile in the longer range, and it does suggest that we are going into a more wintry pattern beginning later next week. This is one of the reasons why again, when we talk about the long range, we've seen high volatility in the models. We may continue to see high volatility in the models. There's a nagging thing in my mind that this is just going to flip back again. But we seem to be seeing a trend here over the last couple of days. You can't make unequivocal statements, and this is, I want the young folks that are watching this to really come away with the following. Please try and get away. I'm going to discourage you from doing something, and that is, please get away from using ensembles, at least for now. Try and get a flavor for what goes on in the upper air by using the operational models, which I show you, because the ensembles, in my view, are not useful forecast tools, especially when it comes to the short range. I think they just wind up confusing. Over time, ensembles tend to be average out. Ensemble models, what I'm talking about is all the models here. You have the operational models, which is what I show you, and then you have different variations of these models where there are different things, the different factors are changed some on them. So a lot of these models have like 15 or 20 different versions, and what the ensembles do is they look at all those versions, and over time, you can average that out, and they put them all together and kind of come up with an average view. You want to become an exceptional forecaster, okay? You don't use averages, because if you use averages, you will have an average performance. So if you want to become an exceptional forecaster, you're going to have to really develop a library of upper air weather patterns in your head, okay? And not do it from model run to model run. This is my big bone that I pick with a lot of long-range forecasters. Okay, so let's leave it at that. I've ended my pontification for the day. SSStormchasers.com, meteorologistjoechaffee.com, weatherlongisland.com, nycweathernow.com, where Angry Ben resides. Joe Stradamus is on the other ones. And, of course, download my app and subscribe to my forecasts if you'd like for the New York City, New Jersey, Long Island, Connecticut, Hudson Valley, and Pennsylvania area. For the download is free, and the link is up here on the screen. And the subscription's just $1 a month, and it really goes a long way in helping me continue to bring all this stuff. And by the way, if you've watched this long, I'm thinking you like my YouTube videos, so subscribe to my YouTube channel. Please, it's a free subscription. My YouTube videos will always, always, always be free, so please subscribe. And no weather issues for the most part for Christmas Eve night or for Hanukkah. So have a great Christmas. I'm going to keep saying it on each video until we get past Christmas. But please have a great Christmas, Hanukkah. Enjoy your family. Enjoy your time. And we will talk to you tomorrow.